大変お待たせいたしました。これより TE-09 Amazon CloudFront からエッジサービスへ CDN を再定義する AWS の新たな取り組みを開演いたします。講師は Amazon Web Services AWS エッジサービス VP プラサード・カリアナラマンです。それではお願いいたします。
Thank you, everyone, for coming to this presentation. We had a great time here? Yes? I'm excited about the size of this presentation. In fact, my last presentation was at reInvent, and I'm amazed at the crowd here. Thank you very much for taking the busy time out of your days and coming to this presentation. Let me quickly go through how we evolved as Edge services. So in 2008, we launched our first service. We called it CloudFront, which is our CDN. Okay? And at that time, we launched it with 14 Edge locations. Okay? Since then, a lot has changed. Our rapid pace of innovation, and as you can see from here, I won't go through each one of them, but we've evolved from a CDN that we started off where we democratized the CDN market to a CDN for enterprises with large number of customers, both internal and external. Okay. As we went through that, in 2010, we actually built our DNS service, which is Route 53. And we built it based on the learnings that we've actually accumulated as part of CloudFront. Then we looked at the kind of content that was being delivered through our edge locations, and bulk of our content was all video. So we said, well, customers need a way to process all this video. And we built Amazon Elastic Transcoder. And that's what Edge Services is all about. It's CloudFront, Route 53, and Elastic Transcoder. So today we're going to focus on two main questions. Number one is how are we different from traditional providers? Number two, how do we do it? What have we built that is different? Now, the reason I'm actually addressing number one is not because we want to say we're better than traditional providers or that you should actually come to us because traditional providers don't do X or Y. But the reason I want to actually talk about that first topic is to say how we're different, not to say the traditional providers are wrong, but just that we think about it differently. Okay? So we actually have this principle at Amazon which are called tenets. Okay? The tenets are things that our service teams actually abide by. These are our focus areas, and they will remain our focus areas for multiple years to come. They are high availability, fast performance, scalability, security, cost, and easy to use. Now, many providers will come and tell you these are their tenets too, but we actually think about them differently. The way we think about them is we actually have single-threaded leaders who are focusing on these areas. There's a lot of power that comes when you focus on one specific area. So we have a leader who's focusing on nothing else but cost. And when a leader focuses on nothing else but cost, you can take those cost improvements and you translate that to price reductions for customers. So let's go through availability and performance. In 2008, we launched with 14 edge locations. And the world was very different at that time. Okay? We had multiple network providers, multiple carriers, but they weren't cross-connecting extremely well. You fast forward that to 2014 and 2015, where we have 53 edge locations, and you can look at that and say, well, there are other providers who have thousands of edge locations. Well, it really doesn't matter. And the reason why it doesn't matter is multiple years back, you had to be at these locations where your carriers were, which means you had smaller locations, and you had to actually have many of them so that you can reach your end users. Today, the world is very different. These carriers all cross-connect, and what really matters is large amount of cache width and efficient servers, which is what we're good at doing, and which is why we actually believe that we have a service that is valuable for our customers. So as of today, we have 53 edge locations, 37 cities, 19 countries, 5 continents, serving a wide range of customers. So let's talk about how we're different from traditional providers. Traditional providers will come and tell you they have 100% SLA. Now, if anyone actually knows the SLA of the internet does not have 100% SLA. Okay? And that SLA is actually measured on the server side. It's measured from measurements that are happening on their data centers. Now, that's fine. That's nothing wrong with that measurement. In fact, we use that measurement internally as well. And we use it for diagnostic. That means for debugging issues. But your end users care about how your sites are performing for them. So for us, while you can actually talk about 100% SLA, what we care about really and what we measure ourselves to is the SLA for your clients, which means there is the server side, and then there is the network in the middle, and then there is the client network as well. And we measure that end-to-end availability. Okay? Traditional providers might have many POPs, but they may use just a few set of POPs for your specific use case. We don't do that. We actually use all our edge locations for all our customers because there's a value that scale brings to us that we'd rather offer to our customers. Now, before we talk about availability and performance, we have to understand how to measure this availability and performance. And this is where the SLA discussion comes in. The easiest way to measure it is from data centers. Okay? It's a valid measurement, but it's easy to do, except it's not as very highly accurate, and it's not representative of your end user performance. Go up the stack, you can measure performance from last mile, which is better than measuring it from data centers. But the best way to measure it, which we believe in, is real user measurements. And we actually make improvements to our systems based on real user measurements. And here's data from a third-party provider. We don't actually do this just based on our own measurements. We use third-party providers to measure our availability. And when we compare client-side availability, which has the network, which has the servers, and it has the client's network in the middle, that performance for the last 30 days in Japan is superior compared to traditional providers. On the DNS side, we've actually always provided 100% SLA for our customers. In terms of latency, many providers actually are very comparable. In fact, there's a few millisecond difference between CloudFront and any other traditional provider. But that's not the key part here. The key part here is that we actually look at performance not just at the average or the P50. I don't think you'll be happy if I told you your end users, 50% of your end users have good performance, but the other 50% does not. So we measure our performance at the P10, at the P50, at the average, at the 75th percentile, at the 95th percentile. And what we focus on is the variability of performance. Okay? It's not important for us to just have a P50 latency, which is better than another provider. What's more important, in our opinion, is to have the consistency of performance across your wide range of users. Let's talk about security. Well, security is often considered a premium service. And in fact, many providers out there will actually come back and tell you it's super important for you to actually pay on security. And most enterprises will actually look at it and say, yeah, it's not worth the risk to not pay on security. Okay? And they use those scare tactics to have you pay for all these premium capability. We actually believe that security is inherent to an application. There are no platform fees for security. You actually even have free SSL capabilities on our platform. Like SNI on our platform is actually offered free. I'll talk about two major improvements that we've done recently on security. And the first one is what we call as Ssl Session Tickets. And both those capabilities that I'm going to talk about, we offered it with no extra charge for our customers. And the reason why we did this was because we believe that these are important for our customers, and we actually even released this broadly across customers. I'll tell you a reason why we announce our services broadly. The reason why we announce them broadly is because we have a multitude of use cases when we announce these services and we provide it to a broad range of customers. It lets us improve our services when we have many use cases on the platform. And that's why we offer it broadly. Okay? Ssl Session Tickets was a capability that we built this year. And what that lets you do is when the SSL negotiation happens between the client and the server, it passes a session ticket back such that for subsequent negotiations, that ticket can be used instead of actually going through multiple negotiations between the client and the server. This actually really improves your performance fairly significantly. The second one we recently released is CloudFront signed cookies. What that lets you do is when you have multiple files that need to be secure, previously you had to secure them through signed URLs. So every URL had to be encrypted. With signed cookies, you can set up a cookie from the origin back to your client, and the client will have to respond back to the cookie. CloudFront will validate the existence of that cookie before it will serve the content. Much more convenient way of securing content. Scalability. The first thing when you actually talk to multiple other providers about scalability, they'll ask you for penalties for bursting traffic, ask you for commitment fees, ask you for platform fees. We don't do any of that. We actually say, look, it has to be super straightforward. The reason why customers come to our platform is because the cloud has to be infinitely scalable. And if it has to be scalable, we should not expect our customers to pay extra charges for scaling. Well, I'll give you an example. This is a real-world example of a Super Bowl commercial that we actually did. The duration of this traffic was of the order of just 15 minutes. This customer actually ended up paying us pennies. But what mattered to us was that we can actually scale for a 9x increase in traffic, and the customer did not have to worry about scaling. They didn't have to pay any platform fees. They didn't have to pay any extra charges for bursting. They just paid for what they used. A recent example in Japan, the left one is actually a new site in Japan that actually had 11x increase in traffic. The customer did not have to do anything else other than tell us that there is this increase in traffic. We didn't charge them any platform fees for it. They paid for just the bytes that were transferred. Low cost. Anyone actually can provide you a low cost. Any provider can come and tell you, look, we are going to reduce your costs. And customers and providers can come and tell you, we're lowering costs because the competition has lowered the cost. We actually think of cost reductions differently. We can lower our costs because we can afford to lower our costs. We invest in reducing the cost of our platform, and so we can afford to do that. There's an important distinction being able to afford something versus just reducing cost. When you actually have a business transaction, if both sides of the business do not actually look at it and say, well, the transaction is beneficial for me, you won't get the best benefits. Right? If one side of the transaction is actually just lowering costs and having reductions in their margins, at some point, you're actually going to get either worse performance or you're not going to have the same quality. We actually take the approach that we're going to lower costs because we can afford to lower our costs. We may not necessarily be the lowest competitor in the world today. And that's because we believe that there are certain real values that our customers get from us. Okay? So that's what is the difference between our traditional providers and edge services. You pay as you go. There's no minimum commitment. There's no platform fee. And we charge the same thing for static and dynamic content. And the last point here is a fairly important point. Many providers will actually tell you that a gigabyte is 1,000 megabytes, a megabyte is 1,000 kilobytes, and a kilobyte is 1,000 bytes. Okay? In true computer science, a gigabyte is 1024 megabytes. A megabyte is 1024 kilobytes, and a kilobyte is 1024 bytes, which means if you use the math of 1024, our price is 7% cheaper. Okay? Now, you can go to a traditional provider and tell them, hey, you're actually telling me something which is wrong. A gigabyte is not 1,000 megabytes. And they'll tell you, oh, yeah, sorry about that. We'll fix it for you. Well, in my opinion, customers should not have to ask for that. It should be automatically provided. Okay. In terms of pricing capabilities, there have been a constant set of price reductions that we've actually done to the platform. The latest one is the reduction in data transfer between an AWS region and CloudFront. That means data that is being transferred for misses between your EC2 instances or your S3 instances to CloudFront are free of charge. Now, the reason why we can do that is because we've built our backbone over multiple years, and we can afford to lower that cost for you. We didn't do this price reduction without being able to afford it. Ease of use. Okay? We've always built our services with a self-service API. We've always said that customers should have the power to change those APIs and to change their configurations the way they want it. We've always said that we will not believe in custom code. Providers out there will actually give you custom code. We actually think that's what creates lock-in, not the set of services and the broad range of services that we have. Okay. So I can talk about all of this material, but I can actually go around this entire room and say, well, we do this, and you can replace another provider here, and they can say the same things for you. So what is important is for me to explain how we do these changes. Okay? Let me tell you 5 things that we traditionally actually always do such that we can do these changes for you. First is we listen to our customers. Second, we build for internet scale. The third one, I'm actually going to give you an example for it. Okay? It's a joke. A patient goes to a doctor and says, doctor, if I touch my right shoulder, it pains. If I touch my left shoulder, it pains. If I touch my forehead, it pains. And the doctor looks at you and says, this is Dr. 1 and Dr. 2. Dr. 1 says, here's a painkiller. Go eat it for 2 weeks, and you'll be fine. Patient walks around, has the painkiller. 2 weeks later, the patient comes back and says, doctor, it still pains when I touch my right hand, my left hand, my forehead. Doctor says, here's another painkiller, collects fees, and goes around. There's a second doctor who actually looks at it and says, you know, the reason why it's paining is because your finger is broken. Okay? And they go and fix the finger. It takes longer to fix the finger, but then the patient is not coming back every 2 weeks. The doctor is not collecting extra money for it. But the key part of this example is that if you don't fix root cause, and even if the root cause is painful and takes long term to fix, you will not build the most resilient service. And that's what we fundamentally believe in. And the last one is super important. Last 2 are super important. We have a breadth of services within Amazon, which means we have to scale for our own internal needs. In the US, we call it eating our own dog food. Okay? That means that if we cannot use our own services, and if we cannot scale for our own services within Amazon, we have no job providing this for our own customers. And we fundamentally believe in that. And finally, this is something that we actually learned. I actually learned coming to Japan. I used to be in the supply chain side of Amazon. And I learned this from Japanese customers, which is continuous improvement. And we actually walk the gemba. We keep reducing our muda. And we keep investing in kaizans, in software engineering. Okay? So I'm going to talk about 5 key things that we've actually built in the last year or so that's meaningful for our customers. The first one is what we call Food Taster. What Food Taster does is it actually tastes every single configuration before it gets to our edge locations. The advantage of this is you can actually stop a change going to production before it actually affects customers. Okay? This requires development effort. It's something that we actually do behind the scenes. It's something that is not viewed automatically by customers. Now, the reason I'm talking about it is so that I can convince you in terms of what we do behind the scenes, which does not increase your costs, but makes the platform more resilient. Okay? The second one, and this is something that is talked about often, and we've been careful about talking about DDoSes, but I'm going to actually open it up for this audience today, and I'm going to talk about DDoS. Okay? So here's how our actual systems are built for DDoS, and we've had multiple years of experience building these systems because we are part of the Amazon family. Today, if you actually get a DDoS, we give customers a unique set of IP addresses. And these are called distribution signatures, which means by knowing the IP address that is actually getting attacked by DDoS, we can uniquely identify a distribution. The moment we can actually uniquely identify a distribution, we can start putting mitigations in place specific to that distribution. That's a capability that you cannot just build overnight. That's a capability that you have to take a long time and thought to build. Okay? The next one that we built is what we call as inline DDoS protection. Traditional ways of actually protecting against DDoS means that your IP space is announced from a different location where you will have specific mitigation capability. So which means when you have a DDoS, your actual users and the DDoS traffic is being moved to a different location where it is getting mitigated. Okay? We actually took a different approach to it. what we said was that we're going to build this DDoS mitigation capability in line with the actual customer traffic. So every single packet that comes to our distributions and comes to our infrastructure is scored. And we have a suspicion score for every single packet. Okay? That score is then used for dropping malicious packets when the volume goes beyond a certain threshold. This capability is there in all our edge locations. It actually automatically protects your traffic, it automatically inspects your traffic, and automatically drops malicious traffic. Now, we've had a long tradition of not talking about DDoS attacks. And there's a reason for it. Okay? There's a simple reason, which is about confidentiality of what the attack vector is. But that's not the main reason why we don't talk about it. The main reason why we don't talk about it that much is because we don't believe there is value for our customers to know about these DDoS attacks. Many other providers will talk about DDoS attacks, and they'll sell you all kinds of products on DDoS attacks. We actually think that's not core part of your business. Your core part of your business is to serve your end users. What's the point in us telling you about the large volumes of attack that we actually mitigate on a daily basis? That just says, hey, you should be really scared about DDoS attacks, so you should go buy this expensive product from us. That's not useful. We'd rather you spend all your time writing code for your end users, focusing on your applications. But to put your mind at ease, here's a recent attack that actually happened on May 6th. It actually went after 34 edge locations. And by the standard that we have, Arbor Network Standard, it's in the top 4% of attacks in the world today. Here's the performance that you actually saw on Route 53. There's no blip in performance. This capability cannot be built without building things like distribution signatures, without building things like inline mitigation. Okay. The next set of slides are going to quickly talk about ease of use. We fundamentally build capabilities such that customers can use a self-service API to actually make their own changes. We think giving that power to our customers makes them a lot more faster to innovate, actually makes them more satisfied customers in the longer term. Okay. And the two things that I want to highlight here is real-time monitoring and multi-object invalidation. So in terms of real-time monitoring, this was actually based on feedback that Japanese customers actually gave us. They wanted the ability to monitor traffic that comes to CloudFront in real time. And they wanted to be able to put alarms on it. They wanted to be notified when the traffic went beyond a certain pattern. And what we had was things like CloudWatch. CloudWatch already built the capability for metrics. It had already built integration with SNS, so you can get notified. So we actually built real-time monitoring such that customers can easily monitor their own applications. Again, this is another capability that we built with no extra charge for our customers, because we believed that this was something that was important for them to operate their service. So that's integrated with CloudWatch alarming. The next one is this huge set of reporting suite. CloudFront, if you remember, did not have a rich reporting platform. And the reason why we didn't build it early on was because we said, these are things that customers can do on their own. We gave them logs, W3C compliant logs. And with that, you can actually build the reporting capability that you want. And instead, we focused on things that customers couldn't do by themselves. It's things like inline mitigations. It's things like food taster and so on. And then, when we had the time, we started building canned reports for you. And we built a bunch of reports, usage charts, which allow you to look at your usage pattern in terms of requests and bytes. Cache statistic reports, which tells you your cache hit ratios. Popular object reports, which tell you which are the top objects that are being accessed on your site. Browser operating systems that are connecting to your application. All of these reports are available with no extra charge for customers. Low cost. I actually talked about why we're able to do low cost. And I'm going to highlight two specific use cases here. One is our backbone that we actually built. And because we built our backbone, we could provide free data transfer between S3 or EC2 or ELB to CloudFront. Okay? The second one is actually SNI. SNI lets you deliver secure content to your end users, and there are no charges for using SNI. Okay? Now, the last point I want to talk about is the data transfer bill. Okay? Many customers have actually come and told us when they move to CloudFront, they can really understand their bill. It's very simple. Bytes transferred times the price per byte. There are no gimmicks, no hidden charges, no surcharges. In fact, I'll give you an anecdotal evidence. One of the customers from Israel moved that traffic from a large provider over to CloudFront. And then they came and told us, there's something wrong. The traffic seems to have reduced to the site. And we said, well, everything looks okay on our server end. We don't have any form of issues. So we got on a call with the customer and we asked them, can you tell us why you think your traffic is reduced? They said, well, our bill is much lower. We said, well, we're not giving you a much better rate compared to the other competition, so I don't understand it. And I find out, well, I can understand it. It's very simple. Bytes transferred times the price, and that's it. Now, internal services within Amazon trust Amazon CloudFront, okay? Which means the same way we have to earn your business, we have to earn our internal businesses as well. We can't afford to actually just run the Amazon.com site with billions of transactions a second on a service that's not resilient. And what it lets us do is to continuously improve our services for our internal needs, which we can translate for our external customers as well. Same thing with Route 53. And many of you may not know this, but Route 53 is the backbone for multiple services within Amazon. ELB, RDS, DynamoDB, S3, CloudFront, all of these services use Route 53. And if we can trust this, and our enterprise customers can trust this, so can you. We have a huge customer base. There is no space on the slide for me to put all the customers on our platform. But we have customers across multiple segments. Samsung, Nintendo, Sega, all kinds of large customers on our platform, including startups to large enterprises. So what makes us unique? Okay. What makes us unique are 5 major things. Okay. One is we can build capabilities I talked about, which is the inline DDoS protection. And the reason why we can build it is based on the multiple years of experience we've actually had protecting our own services against DDoSes. Okay. Number 2, we have a massively scaled network. We had to scale the network for you guys, for US customers. We had to scale the network for our own internal needs, for running Amazon.com, Amazon Instant Video, and so on. And so because we can scale this network, we're able to offer the same scale for you. Okay. 2, we have a broad range of services, which means we can integrate with existing services better. You can get real-time monitoring and alarming with CloudWatch. Well, if we didn't have CloudWatch, we could have built our metric system, but we wouldn't have had a monitoring capability. Because we had CloudWatch, we could integrate with it. Okay? We actually lower our costs because we built a backbone for you. And finally, we actually leverage the learnings from services like Route 53. And we built distribution signatures to uniquely identify distributions that are getting attacked and mitigate them. Now, here's an example of a new set of infrastructure that we've actually built internally that we actually are happy to provide to our customers. And this is built for the scale of Amazon Instant Video. Amazon Instant Video today has millions of viewers across the world. And we couldn't actually serve all that content from traditional CloudFront edge locations. We had to build an infrastructure which is unique. And that infrastructure had to support 3 key things. 1, it had to be high throughput. Multiple terabits per second. 2, it had to have large storage in these edge locations. And large storage is important for large object delivery. And the reason is, if you actually have to go back to the origin for large objects and for long-tail content, you're not going to have the same performance. Okay? And 3 is we had to use a diverse set of providers that peer with us in all these locations. In fact, that architecture diagram Our traditional CloudFront sites have the caching layer and the network layer all built in together. Because we had to scale for Amazon Instant Video, we had to separate out the caching layer from the network layer. And that's what we actually built. We call this internally metro sites. Okay? And in the traditional way of how we actually are self-critical, we actually have built client-side metrics on our Amazon Instant Video players that actually compares that to other CDNs. And we have two metrics that we actually compare ourselves against. And in fact, our Amazon Instant Video team diverts traffic based on these two metrics. Number one is the zero error rate, which means how many sessions did customers have that they had 0 errors. Number two is buffering rate. Two key metrics that our customer, Amazon Instant Video, cares about. And on both those dimensions, we perform better than all the CDNs. Okay? And there's a reason for it, because we actually built for the scale that we actually had to deliver. Traditional networks would not have actually scaled for these needs. Now, in addition to the capabilities that we built, we also empower you to build the capabilities for your specific needs. I'm going to talk about one specific capability, which is taking the same CloudFront reporting and analytics platform and doing deep analysis and big data analysis on AWS. We provide you those log files. You use Kinesis to be able to stream those log files into data warehouse systems like Redshift. And then you can do your custom reporting for your specific needs. In our opinion, this is something that is easy for customers to build because you have a wide range of services that edge services interfaces with. Okay? Number two is our Route 53 health checking services. It allows you to build highly resilient platform on AWS, and it is based on the same fundamental principles that we use internally to improve resiliency. Now, as we build these capabilities, our tenets will remain the same. We will continuously focus on availability. We'll continuously focus on performance, scalability, security, low cost, and ease of use. Those things are invariants in our business. On that note, thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。